Excellent. Thank you so much, Ali. And as we say in Croatia, dobra došli, which is welcome to all of you. And of course, today is a rather auspicious occasion because the Croatia has joined the EU. So this is our first day as a European Union member. Anyway, that's just a comment in passing. So let me get right to it because we don't have a great deal of time, but I do want to be able to share with you as much information as possible. Again, Ali has done a great job of introducing me, so I won't go into any more detail other than to say that there are some of you out there, because of my 40 years of experience, must be thinking, wow, this guy is older than sand, or maybe older than dirt, depending upon where you are in the world. But anyway, let's move on there. What you're going to see is really the essence of a journal article which I wrote for the leading customer management journal in the UK some years ago and have been developing ever since. What we're going to do is, in essence, create what you might call a cutaway diagram. Now, many of you may have seen these diagrams where you take the engine of an automobile and cut it in half, and you see all the little working, moving parts inside the engine, or the human body with all the veins and arteries and muscle systems and so on. So what we're going to be looking at here is, what would you see if you were to take a vertical slice of a truly customer-focused organization? And we're going to capture that in a visual. Now, I don't know about you, but I'm a visual guy, and if I can see it, I can understand it. And hopefully that will work for you as well. So we're going to start right at the top, and we're going to say where this all begins, if you're really creating the kind of strategic customer management system that you should have, is with a customer-focused culture. That is, the senior executives have a deep, abiding belief in the importance of the customer. And their actions, their decisions, their priorities, their allocation of resources puts their money where their mouth is. In fact, they walk the talk. And we're going to say a little bit more about that in just a moment. But to give you a little bit of insight from Xerox Corporation, Xerox has said, in my work with them of some over 8 years, that in a customer-focused organization, there are really only two positions. Either you serve the customer directly or you serve someone who does. And if you aren't doing one of those two things, you might as well just leave. It's as simple as that. All right. Sin number one, not walking the talk of customer focus. Well, what we find out here is that very often most organizations don't truly understand what are the requirements to become a customer-focused organization. Now, I've had the benefit of working with the Malcolm Baldrige Performance Excellence Criteria, the European Foundation for Quality Management Business Excellence Criteria, and of course 40 years of working in this area of strategic customer management, and I've blended these together to create the true requirements for being customer focused. Here is just one in the leadership area. We'll go ahead and read it quickly. Management at all levels regularly meets with customers to listen and learn, not just talk, about changing requirements, how their organization is performing in meeting those requirements, and to strengthen relationships with customers. The sad story here, quite frankly, is that despite all that is said and done about customer focus, a whole lot more is said than is done. And when push comes to shove, in almost too many organizations, in reality, the operational fires of the organization come first before the customers. And so the firefighters come out and the customer gets put on the back burner. Now, what are some of these things that are done? Well, a couple simple examples in this particular requirement. At Xerox, for example, senior executives every month had to sit in the contact center and take complaint calls from customers. In other organizations such as Virgin and their Virgin Train system, senior executives actually became conductors or took other floor positions in the system so that they got in touch with customers. The sad story is that I can walk into just about any organization on this planet, and half of the senior executives in that organization will be unable to carry on a conversation with a customer, whether in a B2C environment or a B2B environment, that will strengthen that relationship. In fact, most of them become a lethal weapon that ends up destroying the relationship. At one point, I even took my own advice, and I left my consulting company, and I took a job as a cashier in a Morrison's food market for 2 months just to see if I had the courage and confidence to be able to work with customers on a day-to-day basis. And in that 2 months, my goal was to have every customer leaving my cash register with a smile on their face and wanting more. And in fact, in 2 months, I was able to rack up more compliments than any other employee in the history of the store. How many senior executives today could go back to the floor and do the same thing? Just for your information, here are a couple of other requirements on policy and strategy and human resources. I'm not going to go into those at the moment, but again, you can see that for each of the key categories of either the Baldrige Performance Excellence or the European Foundation for Quality Management Business Excellence, there are key requirements of a customer-focused nature which need to be met. Moving along, it should be the case that this culture that you have for customer-focused will influence the content of not only your vision and business plan, but your key business objectives in the organization. So, sin number 2, not answering the question, what's in it for the customer? All right, what do I mean by that? Well, what I mean by that is simply this. Let's do a simple matrix. And this is something that I can tell you seems to awe senior executives every time I show this. Across the top, you have your key stakeholder groups, and there may be others in addition to those that I've shown here, besides customers, suppliers, the community, and so on. And down the left side, you have your key business objectives. The question is, if you are to achieve, or if you do achieve that key business objective, number 1, 2, 3, 4, or however many you have, who will benefit most? Too often what we find is that the customer doesn't get a check mark. Who does get the check mark? The shareholder. Those that really represent the financial analysts and looking good in the financial markets. What are some of the other strategic issues that come into play here that are not necessarily just customer focused, but they include having too many business objectives? And number 2, having business objectives that do not link to the vision of the organization. But that's an aside. The main issue here is what's in it for the customer? Out of all of the objectives that you have, does the customer realize any value from what you are doing? Moving on. From that business plan, those key business objectives should flow customer relationship strategies. The basic point here is simply this. Not all customers want to be treated the same. And yet we find that even today there are still those organizations out there that takes a one-size-fits-all approach to relationship strategies. And in fact, I give you a simple example from Hilton and in Europe. In particular, they have a group of customers called the diamond customers. These are customers who stay in their hotels at least 150 nights a year. And as you know, 80% of the room rate is profit. And so they want these customers. In fact, they represent only 5% of the total customer base, but they generate over 45% of the revenue. And when these customers start telling you that, hey, you know, I'm being treated like rubbish, like any occasional customer who stays with you one time a year, that's not a good sign, especially when they become defectors and start moving to the competition. Sin number 3, failure to define the specific relationship strategies. And how do you do that? Again, you need to identify who are truly your most strategically important customers or consumer segments and why. And what can you do to add value in each of those cases? How do you align yourself, in the case of B2B, not only strategically with that organization so that you have the same view of the future that they have, but also that you align operationally, that within the working relationships that exist between you and that organization, you have a great or exceptional working relationship, and you understand their requirements, as well as other aspects, which we're going to get into in just a moment, that you assess your performance against those requirements, and that you understand your vulnerabilities and your two sources of competitive advantage, or in other words, enhance your approach, and then develop your strategies accordingly. And in the center, you can see your customer relationship management system is gathering information, ensuring that that information is continuously refreshed, and providing that information around. At the bottom, you see, are you plain vanilla? Well, just a quick comment here. If you're in a B2B environment, I have found over my 40 years that there are two types of B2B customers, either plain vanilla or value-oriented. Your plain vanilla customers are the ones who tend to be very operationally focused, very tactical. They don't like to share information. They treat you as a vendor. They beat you up on price and availability every chance they get, whereas the value-oriented ones are strategically positioned. They're looking for a business partner. They share information. And these are the ones that you can do business with long term. You need to understand what sort of B2B customers you have, and also the same applies to a lesser extent with your B2C customers. Now, where do you want these customer relationship strategies to have an impact? Well, you want it to have an impact where you and the customer come together to do business, namely in the customer experience or the customer engagement processes or system of your organization. So the next step is, or next sin, I should say, is a failure to understand and enhance the customer engagement system. Let me give you a simple example. Oh, yes, you remember Dell Computer. Ask me if I care. Yes. Here is a situation from a telecommunications company. This happens to be Motorola. Again, it's a B2B. I could show you a B2C situation, but let's just use this. You can see across here that you have a number of engagement processes in this engagement system. The sales process, the delivery process, installation and training, repair, service, maintenance, technical support, account maintenance, and so on. What are the issues here? Well, there are a number of issues that you as a senior executive need to understand, such as, where is competition doing a better job than we are? What are the critical requirements of the customer in each of these particular areas? How are we performing? Where are we having the greatest difficulty, or where is the customer having the greatest difficulty in doing business with us across all of these different engagements? And where do our people who serve the customer have the greatest difficulty ensuring customer satisfaction? Those are just 5 of some 20 questions that you should be asking yourself. But the key point here is that when a customer is ready to make a purchase from your organization, one of the things they're going to look back and do is reflect on all of these engagements they've had with you, and they're going to go, wow, boy, that was so great. I'm going to do it again. or they're going to go, whoa, I hate this company. I'm never going to do business with you again. One way or the other, you're going to win or lose based on how effective these engagement processes are and what you do to improve them by listening and learning from customers. The next sin, failure to understand your customers to the appropriate depth or breadth and add value along the way. What do I mean? Well, before we get to that, let me ask you this. Every customer has two critical costs of doing business with your organization. Do you know what they are? They both begin with E. The first one is the easy one. I'll give it to you. It's the economic cost. What does it cost me to get the business, the service, or the product, or the support that I want from your organization? The second one is often the forgotten one, but I can tell you that it is often forgotten, but it is lethal if not looked after, and that is the emotional cost. In other words, how much pain does the customer incur to get the products and services that they want from you? And I could go into detail about British Telecom and the long waits in queue on the telephone, trying to get to someone who I was hoping would understand my problem and help me, and frankly didn't care whether I lived or died. But in that case, my emotional cost skyrocketed. All right, so that's just one situation. But you really need to understand the customer at three levels, what I call the basic needs. And again, it's probably easier to understand these in a B2B environment, but they work just as well in a consumer environment. These are the things that you need to do routinely right on almost a flawless Six Sigma basis. I need to get an accurate invoice from you every month, an accurate statement from the bank every month, and it needs to be timely. All right? Otherwise, I'm going to call up and complain. It's just simple things like that. It's getting on-time deliveries of whatever I asked for. Then there are what I would refer to as the wants. These are the wishes. Remember that every customer has a wish list. I don't know how many of you believe in Santa Claus. I believe in Santa Claus. I still put a wish list together of those things that I want at Christmas. I mean, I don't get them, but I still make my wish list nonetheless. But this is what the customer really would like you to be doing, really wants you to be doing. But oftentimes the only way you can get to understanding what these wishes are is through focus groups and in-depth interviews where you pull this out of the customer. And it's similar to what McDonnell Douglas did when they built the B-17 cargo jet. And the early prototypes, if you listen to the pilots and the co-pilots, they said, wow, boy, I can't believe this. This is everything that I wished an airplane could do, everything that I wished an airplane could be. And of course, the military gave McDonnell Douglas the contracts for that B-17. Anyway, value, or C-17, I should say, not the B-17. That was a little too old. The C-17, the cargo jet. The last one is value. Before I get into value, I would say that your wants will add differentiation. Your basic needs do not give you differentiation. They are what you need to do in order to simply being able to play the game over and over again. And if you screw up on the basics, all right, if you don't get those right long enough and the emotional costs of customers go up, you'll lose them. Again, your wants will add some differentiation. Your value, which is determined by benefits and is defined as any tangible or intangible benefit which the customer perceives, not you. It doesn't matter whether you think you're adding value or not. It all revolves around the customer, perceives the competition as either unwilling or unable to provide. And therefore, for you, it's an immediate source of differentiation. I apologize for the spelling error there. My gosh. And there are 8 sources of value. there is a prerequisite, and that prerequisite is being flawless on the basics. Again, I can quote an example from Corning and their maker, their particular division that made computer screens for different computer companies in Japan. And I remember that at one point the senior executives of Corning went to Japan to meet with their customer there, and they said, "Oh, we want to build a stronger relationship with you." And the senior executive of the Japanese computer maker stood up and said, "Please, sit down. We don't want to build a stronger relationship with you because your deliveries are always late. Your invoices are always wrong. Why should we want to increase our dependency on you if you can't even do the simple routine things correctly?" Key sources of value. Again, the first one is the image, reputation, brand strength of the organization. It's what we call feel-good factor. Here's a guy who's feeling good. All right, beyond that, process, ease of doing business, responsiveness, speed, fast cycle time. The key to ease of doing business is that if you make it easy for the customer to do business for yourself, you are simplifying your own business processes and reducing your own internal costs of doing business. Responsiveness. You know and I know that every person alive today has less time to do more. And if you're wasting my time, you're taking away value. You're not adding value. Your people, to the degree that they are consultative in nature, that they are proactive, that they're more technically competent, this will add value. Your products, your services, and your technology, the technology being enabler, and the features and benefits which add value inherent in those products, those services, that technology. And here, key is innovation. How innovative is your organization? Support. What we're talking about is always being there when the customer needs you. It's doing things like making sure that the customer is never left in a state of uncertainty. For example, if the electricity goes off and you call your utility company and say, "Hey, my electricity has gone off. What do I do? Do I remove things from the refrigerator? Do I go stay in a hotel?" And they just say, "Yeah, we know the electricity's off. We're working on it." So what do you do with the rest of your life? You can't leave a customer in a state of uncertainty. And the last thing is problem solving, making sure that you have effective and efficient problem solving capability. And the last one is information, access to availability of information which the customer desperately is looking for. So here you are to the next level, your customer sensing processes. In other words, you want these relationship strategies to impact the engagement area where you and the customer are coming together to do business, but you need something that's going to tell you whether it's working. And these are the customer sensing processes. This is sort of like the whiskers on a cat. I don't know if any of you have a cat or a pet, but you know that cats have whiskers. And those, if your cat woke up the next morning, tomorrow morning, and had lost its whiskers during the night, its judgment would be impaired. Okay, it would not have any way to sense its external environment in an effective way. And so it is with organizations. You need to have good sensing processes to the outside world. And those sensing processes from a customer standpoint, three major ones are going to be as follows. All right, if we use, oh, there's an angry customer. Your complaint management process, your customer satisfaction and loyalty measurement process, and your contact centers. I'm just going to show you a couple of quick examples. One from complaints. This goes back to Motorola, and what you can see here are the various engagement processes: delivery, sales, service, administration, installation. And this is your problem frequency. It's basically saying that 35% of the problems which customers incur have something to do with delivery, either incomplete delivery, delivery is not on time, or they're damaged goods, and the list goes on. So If you were in the quality department, what would you attack first? Probably delivery. You would try to drive that number down to an acceptable level from 35%. Now let me give you a different perspective. This is the frequency of occurrence, but let's look at the severity of occurrence. These are the percentage of customers who are saying, I never want to do business with you again as long as I live because of the problem that I experienced in doing business with you. And what do you see? Something different. Not delivery, but sales. Now, the percentages are smaller, but these are lethal percentages. And if you looked in sales to see what were the 3 top items that were occurring in there, you would never imagine what the first and most lethal of these problems were. The first one is not returning telephone calls or emails to the customer. And I'll tell you, if you don't do that, the message that you're sending to your customers is, I don't really care. I'm too busy. I have other more important things to do than look after you, my customer. Some of the other things that were in there were making promises and not delivering. Another one would have to do with requirements, and in fact not understanding my requirements. Now you may say, well, that's crazy, but it's not crazy because of the fact that too many salespeople spend 80% of their time talking instead of 80% of their time listening to what the requirements of the customer are, and so the customer often ends up with something that they didn't really want. Or you have a salesperson who's uncomfortable with the latest technology, which is what the customer really needs, and because they're uncomfortable, they're not going to talk about it. Or because there's an incentive on a particular product or service, they're going to sell that because they know it's going to put more money in their pocket. So there are a lot of things that drive salespeople to commit what I would refer to as unnatural acts. And in the end, these are acts which can destroy your relationship with customers. And I will tell you that once you have damaged the relationship, the trust and confidence that a customer has in your salespeople, it is terribly difficult to recover from that. You can have a late delivery and you can explain to the customer why that delivery was late, what you're going to do to prevent that from occurring in the future, and you can get back on track. But building trust and confidence back is much more difficult. Here you have something that relates to your contact centers, and I'll simply say that depending upon where you are in this matrix, you'll see on the left-hand side, market conditions, customers and competition, either stable or rapidly changing. Across the top, you have technology. So we're not considering all the factors, but certainly 3 critical factors that can cause a turbulent market for you. And what we're seeing is that today, your organization is migrating, is moving from what might be the most comfortable cell in this matrix, namely one where you have stable market conditions and stable technology, up to the most uncomfortable cell in this matrix, where you have rapidly changing technology and market conditions. And here you have the need for almost real-time data and information about customers, about the market and competition, and where in your organization can you look to find most of that? Right in your own contact centers. But I will tell you that from personal experience, half of the senior executives that I've met over the last 40 years don't even know where their contact center is, let alone have they ever sat down and talked with the agents in that contact center to learn about what their customers are saying, what they're talking about in terms of new requirements, what the competition is doing better, anything of that sort, or taking calls from customers. So they are at a loss. Those that do, such as in the case of Xerox or AT&T Universal Card Services, which is now part of Citibank, are gaining the benefit associated with that. So in effect, your contact center should not be viewed as a cost center, but should be viewed as a strategic asset. All right, so now we're collecting information through those sensing processes, and we should be collecting it in what we would call a strategic customer database. Now, whether you call that your customer relationship management IT system or the XYZ system, I don't really care, but the fact of the matter is that that system should contain every piece of information about your customers that is vitally important to establishing and building exceptional relationships with your customers. Here I've chosen to show it as CRM. And this particular diagram, by the way, just so you know, I developed because I was having strategic relationships with both, or discussions with both Oracle and SAP. And according to them, the only part of this diagram that you needed was the CRM component. And I said, no, that's not true. If you're really talking about a strategic customer management system, the CRM system is only one component of that strategic customer management system. It is not the whole strategic customer management system. So number 7 is really a combination of a failure to establish an integrated information architecture, an infrastructure, and utilize systematic approaches. What do I mean? Well, very quickly, in most organizations, customer information really are islands of information. Your complaints are collected sometimes in your contact center, sometimes in the quality department. Your customer satisfaction measurement information is collected in your marketing department. Your customer visits are conducted in your sales department. And then you have your contact center. And so what you find is that in each of these cases, you have people making decisions which are suboptimal as far as the customer and as far as the overall organization is concerned, because none of these departments, none of these functions has the complete picture. They only have one piece of the puzzle. Unless you connect all of these elements together into an integrated, comprehensive database so that you have the whole picture, you will be making suboptimal decisions, not only for the customer, but for your business. Secondly, I will tell you that a best practice, and again I go back to AT&T Card Services in Jacksonville, Florida, where they had what they called a listening post council. There is a need, a definite need for a focal point in your organization for the customer. If you simply say customer focus or customer satisfaction is the job of everyone in the organization, guess what? You know as well as I do, it will never happen. You need to have a loyalty or relationship council consisting of some senior executives, some middle management, and some frontline individuals who are looking at all of the data that is being brought to them by the listening post team. Each listening post team has a different set of data that they have analyzed and are bringing in. One listening post team is bringing in the analysis and interpretation of your complaint management data. The other one is bringing in the analysis and interpretation of your customer satisfaction and loyalty measurement and management data. The next one is bringing in information from your contact centers. Then you have your account management teams that are bringing in information from your customer visits. Now, this loyalty or relationship council has the complete picture. Okay, all the pieces of the puzzle are put together. You are then able to identify and prioritize opportunities for improvement, assign ownership, namely accountability, for getting those items acted upon, and then develop and execute action plans, monitoring as you go. Unless this is done, you will not be truly effective. The last is taking a systematic approach with customer focus, and here I use the Deming improvement cycle: plan, do, measure, improve, and I mentioned at the bottom the case of Duke Power. Some years ago, I met with the CEO, the president, Rick Priory, and the full management committee of Duke Power. Duke Power is an electric utility in Charlotte, North Carolina that has 6 million customers. I asked the CEO and Rick Priory, the president, and the management committee, I said, gentlemen, and they were in fact all gentlemen, there were no ladies included, unfortunately. I said, what is it that you do every day to clearly communicate to your staff, to the people in your organization, that you are absolutely 100% committed to the customer? And after dead silence for about 5 minutes, Rick Priory, the president, finally raised his hand and he said, I visited 100 customers last year. I said, Rick, don't be afraid to speak up. Great, you visited 100 customers. I raced up to the whiteboard and I wrote that down. I said, anyone else? Okay, there was nothing else. That was the only single thing out of about 20 senior executives. I said, okay, Rick, you've got 6 million customers. Tell me, what data did you analyze and how did you analyze it that determined for you that 100 was the right number of customers to visit? Maybe you should have visited 200. Maybe you should have visited 50. How do you know that the 100 you visited were the right ones to visit? Instead of just saying, oh, we haven't seen Stan in a couple of years. Maybe it's time we go out and visit Stan at XYZ company and talk to him. Or, oh, this account is threatening to leave us. We better go out and talk to them. Then I said, once you go out to these organizations, do you use a common approach? Do you gather and ask the same kinds of questions as you go from one company to the other? And do you capture that information on a piece of paper or just in your head? And when you come back to the organization, do you share that information with people who need to know that so that they can improve what they're doing and improve the quality of relationships with your customers? And then at the end of the year, do you reflect on those 100 visits and say to yourself, wow, what could I have done better? And what can I do better next year when I visit my customers? And when Rick started to cry, I figured it was time to move on to something else. But this simple model, planning what you do before you do it, that is doing your homework, doing your analysis and interpretation, then implementing your action plan, measuring or checking to see if you are generating the desired results, and then making mid-course corrections or improving further, is a simple model that every individual in every organization should be using today. Thank you, Dr. Deming. And thank you for listening in on this webinar. And I think now it is time for questions. I turn the podium back to you, Ali.
Well, thank you very much, Dr. Marra. A very, very intriguing presentation. Folks, now we're open for the question and answer. So if you have questions, you can put your questions in the question box, write them, and I will be happy to read them over. Or you could raise your hand. There's a hand icon on your webinar console on the right side of your screen. If you click on the hand icon, I shall be able to unmute your microphone and give you an opportunity to speak to Dr. Marra.
And I'm sorry, I'm not able to see hands, but that's okay.
Yes, sir. I'm moderating, so
Sorry.
you need to depend on me. I see there are already questions in the box, so let me start reading over. Question number 1. It's on management to meet customers. How is it done? Either through structured meetings or random meetings arranged? What is the recommended process for management to regularly interact with customers?
Well, there are several processes involved. When it comes to key accounts, if you're in a business-to-business environment, you arrange meetings and with the appropriate decision makers, decision influencers, and frankly, depending upon the nature of the product or service or support that you're offering to your customers, you might want to include user groups. But as far as the key decision makers and key decision influencers are concerned, yes, interviews should be made, and those interviews should be done not in a peer-to-peer basis. In other words, it should not be the CIO of your organization that's going out to talk to the CIO of the customer organization, because all you're going to end up talking about is IT. All right? You need to have someone from marketing going out and talking to, for example, a CIO or decision maker in the other organization. Every single executive of your organization at some point during the year should be out spending time after having made an appointment with an appropriate senior executive at the customer organization. As far as consumers are concerned, the best approach that I have found is through focus group activity, getting a group of 8 to 15 consumers together in a room around the table and simply asking them, hey, how are we doing? What do you like? What don't you like? Not only about the ease of doing business with us, but our products and services and our support, and gathering information that is very rigorous and very rich in information. Okay.
Okay, we have a hand raised. Let me try to unmute the gentleman. Yes, Brother Muhammad Salama, can you hear us?
Yes, I can hear you, but can you hear me?
Yes,
I can hear you.
We can hear you. Could
Thank
you
you,
please,
sir.
could you please introduce yourself, where you're calling from, and please ask the question?
My question is from HR perspective. Our customers are internal customers. Specifically,
Yes.
we are in the training department. We are in a training function, and
Okay.
we definitely don't want to take our in-house trainees for granted. When it comes just to following the program and finishing the calendar. And right now, the feedback after the training or the test or just going for the sponsor does not seem to be updated with the new really millennium of thinking of customers, in-house customer satisfaction. What do you suggest, sir?
Well, I suggest let me just say this. You've touched on an issue of vital importance to organizations. When I worked with DuPont and Nortel, their two biggest issues, the two biggest problems they had in taking care of the external customer was the fact that they had poor internal working relationships. All right? What I do in a situation like this, I use what I call a center of the universe approach. I go into an department or a function in particular, and I take that function and I say to them, okay, who do you maintain relationships with internally as a function? Identify those organizations, those individuals with whom you have working relationships today. Now do two things. Number one, rate the importance of those relationships to your function. Where is the dependency the greatest? Okay, who do you spend the most time with? And other key questions of that nature. So they rank order the importance of those internal areas of the organization with whom they have relationships, and then I ask them to rate very candidly the quality of the relationship they have with those areas. And too often you find out that those areas that have the most important ranking, the highest ranking, have the lowest quality of relationship. And then I say, you're going to have to sit down with that organization and you're going to have to understand why that is. All right. Now, there are simple questions that you can ask about levels of responsiveness, levels of availability of information, and a whole host of other things that need to be brought out during those discussions. And you can have a situation where the function fills out the answers to, say, these 10 questions, and the customer, that most important customer where the quality relationship is lowest, also fills out those questions. You come together, compare the answers, see where the differences are the greatest, and that gives you an area to focus attention for discussion. But again, the key is having the discussion to understand that customer's requirements of you. Too often they aren't understood.
This something is sometimes it's a big challenge, especially when these customers are also franchisees. As you see, franchisees always worry about profit while we worry about the brand integrity. Yani we have our royalty, and what matters to them is profitability.
Money in their, yes, money in their pocket. Yes.
Yes, exactly. It's even more complicated when we really want to satisfy their needs, when the strategies are of satisfaction. As you said, you have to really have this relationship strategy.
Well, I can tell you unequivocally, if 40 years have taught me anything, it's that adding value offsets the financial aspects of that relationship. Okay, you can gain significantly by adding value in those 8 different ways that I showed you earlier about value. Those are meaningful. And I'll tell you, if you're dealing with plain vanilla franchisees, you're not going to make a lot of progress, all right? If you're dealing more with value-oriented franchisees, you're going to make a lot of progress. It may come to the fact, as in the case of Goodyear, where certain dealers of Goodyear tires were acting as prostitutes in the marketplace and selling tires at under market value to the point where they were driving franchisees and stores out of business, and Goodyear had to decide, I'm going to stop doing business with these dealers because they're disrupting the markets too greatly, and they cut off $300 million worth of business. So sometimes you have to fire customers, you have to fire franchisees, you have to, in some cases, restructure the financial or the legal documentation between yourself and the franchisee to get things to where it needs to be. So there are a lot of issues at stake.
Our dream, that's my last comment, it's not just we shall only instill the culture in them that we are serving the final customer through them. Our dream is to be like father and mother, both sides taking care of the customer in the middle. If it visually represents something else, then rather serving them and they serve the customer, we'd rather having the customer in the middle where both of us can take care of them.
Fantastic. If you are receiving feedback from the franchisees' customers that say, wow, we want to do business with that franchisee is fantastic, or as the British say, bloody fantastic, then you've got something, all right? And if you are enabling that franchisee through the addition of value to be able to do just that, then you're home free. I mean, you are where you need to be.
Thank you very much, sir.
You're welcome.
Can we all clap for you, sir, because me and the whole team is
Thank you very much, Brother Salama. Could you just tell us, for the sake of audience, in which organization you're working and where you're calling from?
Which functions are attending with me right now?
Which organization you're representing, just to let the audience know.
I'm representing Al-Bake Food Systems.
Okay, thank you very much.
Al-Bake Food Systems, sir.
Thank you very much, Brother Salami.
Okay, and I would say every senior executive in that organization should go out and work in a franchisee organization alongside those franchisees and understand what they do every day.
Thank you very much.
Back to the floor.
Okay.
Anyway.
Thank you very much, Brother Salama, for your question, and
We enjoyed.
interactive. And let's move to the other question.
Yes, we are done.
Another question, a short one. What are the best tactics to create an emotional relationship with customers?
What are the best tactics for creating an emotional relationship? Well, again, there are probably what I would refer to as the 6 pillars of a relationship. These are, over the years, the 6 factors that I have determined through empirical research and otherwise to be the 6 most important factors that influence whether a relationship is exceptional or not. What are those? The first one is an attitude of service, okay? A willingness to serve. In other words, I don't have to force you, I don't have to look for you, I don't have to pull the answers out of you. You willingly want to help me. Okay, another one is showing that you care about me. All right, it's being empathetic. All right, it's looking at things through my eyes. It's letting me know that you really care. It's building trust and confidence. Open, candid information and discussions help to build trust and confidence in the customer. What are some of the others? Being the best that you can be. All right, first time, every time. Never settle for mediocrity. All right, always ensuring that the customer perceives you as someone and perceives your organization as one which believes in excellence, not just being average, not just being mediocre. Another one is having fun. All right, what does that mean? It means ensuring that the customer perceives you as someone who enjoys what they do. They enjoy working with their colleagues. They enjoy working with customers. Just like when I became a cashier at Morrison's Food Market, and I would say to people as they came to my cashier, I said, "Wow, it's great to see you. Thank you for coming. I've been waiting for you." You know? And I engaged them. I might only have them for 2 minutes, but in that 2-minute engagement, I strengthened the relationship, and they left with a smile on their face. And that's the kind of thing that you want to have happen. Now, I may have missed something in there, but you get the point. I mean, Vince Lombardi of the Green Bay Packers, you know, one of the most successful football teams in the history of America, said that when organizations and customers come together, there are 3 key questions which customers always ask. Number 1, can I trust you? Number 2, do you care about me? And number 3, do you believe in excellence? Now, I've taken those 3, which I have proven beyond a shadow of doubt over 40 years to be exactly the case, and added 3 additional ones to them. But those are the 6 pillars of excellence, and they make all the difference in the world, believe me.
Okay, sir, we have just a couple of minutes, so let me take quickly just 2 more questions. A short one. How do you manage bad stories, or should manage the damage control with customers?
How do you manage the bad stories? How do you manage damage control? Well, I think one of the things that you need to do is always make a good faith effort with the customer. All right? No matter, and number 1, number 2, you need to learn from the situation. All right? You don't need to go out and blame somebody. You don't need to think of the customer as being someone who's out there to rip you off, or a crook, as they used to do at Chevrolet Motor Division of General Motors, all right? But someone who is a valued asset to the organization, all right, and you, as well as your people. So you need to learn and reflect and take whatever corrective action is necessary to prevent that from reoccurring. And you need to make a good faith effort. Now, I will tell you, you don't necessarily want every customer either, and it's totally appropriate to fire some customers. For example, if I was Clorox Bleach and I had customers calling me up, Clorox Bleach in San Francisco, received calls from customers that saying, you know, could you please make your bleach in a strawberry flavor? Or could you make your bleach in a peach flavor? And yes, it's true. There are people who gargle and brush their teeth with bleach. Now, as you know and I know, bleach can be lethal. It can be hazardous to your health. And so Clorox said, well, we're entirely sorry. We please, you know, are sorry that our bleach doesn't measure up to your taste requirements. Possibly our competition might do a better job. Here are some coupons to go and try the competition's bleach. So there are different ways to handle and contain the situation, but always make a good faith effort, always learn and take corrective action.
Okay, just last one question from Sibyl Shaheen. Is there any difference between clients and customers, and which one builds more a relationship?
In my mind, there's no difference. In fact, if I had my way, quite frankly, I would eliminate not only the word complaint, but also the word customer from the dictionary. What I would talk about are relationships. That's really what matters. Whoever you have, who are your key stakeholders out there? Who do you have an important relationship with? The whole focus should be on relationships. I don't care what you call them, X, Y, Z, clients, customers, consumers, whatever. These are relationships. Every relationship has value. Well, almost every relationship. Let's put it that way. I mean, when the gurus of customer satisfaction met some years ago, and I don't necessarily consider myself a guru of customer satisfaction measurement, although I've been at it for 40 years, so I'm pretty good at it. They said, you know what, there's 5% of every customer's or of every company's customer base that will never be satisfied. They will never be happy. They wake up in the morning and they say, whose life can I ruin today? They kick the dog as they go out the door. All right, there's nothing you can do for that 5%. So focus on the 95% of those that you can do something with, and build exceptional relationships. Focus on relationships.
Well, thank you very much, Dr. Ted Marra, for your time. I would like to especially thank you on behalf of MILE for taking this time to share this excellent presentation with our participants. Thank you all those who participated. Before I conclude, Dr. Ted Marra, would you like to give any concluding remarks yourself?
Yes, I would simply like to say thank you all very much for participating in this. I hope there were at least one or two nuggets hidden somewhere in all of my words that you can take back and put to work for you to create better organizations which are more customer focused. If you can do that, I'm a happy guy. All right? So I leave it in your hands. Go for it. Make it happen. And thank you.
And indeed, it was very useful. And thank you indeed for the presentation once again. Folks, before I end this webinar, let me just quickly show you our community page. I'm just going to share my screen. If you can see my screen now, you must be seeing the section of the downloads. On our community.mile.org, we have a download section. You can always log in and sign in for free and be able to download the various presentations in the archive sections to access and download and watch the recorded version of the webinars. and equally participate or join the discussions of various community of practices. So we have about 10 plus communities ranging from emotional intelligence to key performance indicators on corporate governance, entrepreneurship, media and communications. All communities are moderated by subject experts of their field, so you have a chance to interact with them and learn from them and pose your questions for which they will be answering, or they will be interacting one by one with you guys. So with that note, I'm going to conclude. I know Dr. Marra and Mal is working to also establish a community of practice on our community, for which we will be announcing it very soon. With that note, I would like to end this webinar once again.